I want to thank my co-curator for this program, LB Bird. The Tenderloin Museum, who have very graciously hosted us tonight. Yeah, you can clap. SF Urban Film Fest, thank you so much for the free food and the opportunity to have this program. And then lastly, Mask Block Sunset SF came through today with 50 free KN95s. So if you would like a high quality mask for free and you have not gotten one already, they are at the front of the museum. All right, so I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and then we're going to get started with a 30-minute discussion. I'm also going to try to multitask and start my timer so we don't go over. All right, here we go. Thank you. All right, so first, Ripley Bennett unfortunately cannot be with us today because of illness, but I'm going to give her a brief shout out anyway. So Ripley is a proud self-taught illustrator, activist, and organizer born and raised in Ohio. She is the current visual communications specialist at the Transgender, Gender Variant, and Intersex Justice Project here in San Francisco. You can donate to TGIJP Capital Campaign by scanning a QR code, which we have in the front of the museum, and we will also be displaying it again at the end of the panel discussion. Lalu Osman curates, yeah. Lalu always has friends in the audience. So Lalu curates, exhibits, and archives still and moving images. They are currently a PhD candidate in film and digital media at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Lalu's artistic, curational, and scholarly work focuses on trans, queer, and feminist theories, histories, pedagogies, and praxis. They have curated for the Pemba Hayat Queer Fest, Bebop Berlin, Aphrodite Festival Athens, Cambridge University, and AWID Feminist Forum, among others. Born and raised in Ankara, Turkey, Lalu holds a BA in economics from Bogazici University and an MA in film and screen studies from Goldsmith College, University of London. All right, going down the line, Jill Hill. You can cheer as well. Is a filmmaker, video artist, and agent of chaos from Palm Springs, California. Jill was the producer for the Rent Check series, starring Mike Evans, Jr., writer, director, editor for the 10-minute epic that you just watched, Kill Your Landlord, and editor for the internet's worst television show, Rock Band Land's Ugly Baby. She also creates visual horrors for drag artist Obsidian Absurd as part of her gender defiance. Apart from her creative endeavors, she is also a corporate representative of Ursus Industries, a venture capital startup dedicated to monetizing the human experience. Jill is also a proud member of Surge Media Collective in San Francisco. All right, Kazani Kalani Finau is, you can clap as well. Kazani is Samoan first and a man with trans experiences. He is an advocate, community organizer, and multidisciplinary artist who is protective of his people's narrative, a son, a big brother, a fairy goddad, and a warrior. Kazani was born and raised in Frisco. He believes in individual freedom and for people to define their own self-determination. Kazani is the founder of the organization Shine with Purpose and is a student at CCSF, majoring in Critical Pacific Islands and Oceania Studies. Shine with Purpose centers Pacifica, Black and Brown, Indigenous trans mask folks in their storytelling, activism, self-empowerment, and self-determination. All right. So I have one question for each of our panelists, and then 2 questions that all of our panelists are going to answer. So yeah, you can maybe pull up the timer. Thank you. Thank you. It's 4:20. Okay. All right. So our first question is for Lalu. So Lalu, I'm wondering how the making of The Neighbor, the film that y'all watched first, speaks to your larger vision of a better world for trans people. Specifically, I'm thinking about how you described making The Neighbor as a kind of collective effort. And I am also thinking about things you've said before about trans feminism and international solidarity. What did you learn from making The Neighbor? Did that experience inform or change your thoughts about strategies for liberation?
Thank you for all these questions. And I am not sure how many of it I can answer. And I produced, quote unquote, The Neighbor. I think we all did many jobs and we needed some titles to put down. And the director is sitting there on the back. Jedi. And I'm mostly gonna tell their story. Jedoy left film school, I think, in 2009, and they were one of the first cohorts in this film academy in Turkey called Mimar Sinan Film Academy, a fine arts school, that actually entered the university not through special exams, but a general exam. So they were one of the first group of students who were coming from more marginalized background, let's say, or underprivileged background, not middle uppers, elite, fine arts student, but a trans and low-income student in this film academia, and they couldn't survive for long. They didn't really felt welcome in this university. They also didn't have enough money to produce the film to finish their school, and they ended up working in the film industry in Turkey. And now, like, since somehow everyone knows about Turkish TV series, it is actually a big industry. It is one of the biggest in the region, and they really loved Hollywood. They always aspired to be Hollywood, and there was a period of time that Turkish cinema was copying Hollywood called Yeşilçam. And this Fine Art Academy professors are all Yeşilçam directors. So think about Scorsese teaching in a film school, and he really knows he is the Scorsese, so he wants to teach in that way. I don't know, maybe Scorsese wasn't the best example, but how I would describe them, and I can explain it later, but most of these professors in that university were old white Turkish cishet guys who wanted to teach film in the ways they wanted to, and they believed to. So that's why actually, like, this is a document we submitted to the university. That's why we have Jedoy's picture and the student number, all these details they're asking at the beginning, and we want to kept it in this way. We thought it was a bit camp. And yeah, I want to talk a bit more about the process, because they actually went back to the university during COVID because they didn't need to go back. And going back to the issue of they wanted to go back not only because they needed to finish the film school, but they were thinking to move to the US or outside of Turkey, and they wanted to be a better migrant with a degree. So that's a collective effort. We founded this WhatsApp group called Let's Get Jedoy Graduated. And all these folks were in that group, and it was a COVID lockdown. And in Turkey, one of the essential industries in Turkey was film industry, because they made sure that everyone was watching some stuff. So they always had these permits during COVID lockdowns, and we actually made fake permits through Jedoy's real permits for our friends to be able to film in the lockdown. Most of the cast and crew was trans, queer folks, and really good allies. We kept it really small, and we were following a script. We had like a serious guideline to follow. There need to be 2 characters. There need to be a huge transformation for one of the characters, an evil one and a good one that this story, the basic story that we all know. And we, I think, chose our battle to at least have a good trans film, because we are pretty sure that in this university, this is the only film that there are trans people, that they're not just trans sex workers. We can be trans sex workers, and there are many trans sex workers, and we are proud of them and will be, but not only. And I think directed by a trans director. And we get Jidoy graduated, but where we started with the folks in the university was pretty funny, because the advisor was asking what was the difference between gay and trans. So that was literally the level we have started. So throughout the way, we had to explain a lot of the things to those men. But I'm proud of ourselves doing that thing during the quarantine and everything. And I could say that I am more of a, maybe experimental. I love documentary more. I don't really like this way of fiction. But this film changed my feelings about it, because I think at the end, when we started to screen the film with audiences, with our friends in different places, and when, I don't know, even with these groups, most of us watched the films earlier and had a like pre-panel discussion, and like hearing about people's reaction to these films reminded me that we also need these forms that we really know, because we grew up watching these forms, loving these stories, and we don't have to destroy them all the time. Maybe I will do it in my work, but they're also very handy and lovely, and I don't know, I was barely crying on the back watching my friends here with you on screen. So yeah, that's, I think, the story of the film. And I had all these notes. How many minutes did I speak?
I think you have like 1 more minute.
Okay, then I used my last minute when I was, giving my last minute.
I think Jill has her own microphone. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so the next question is for Jill. So as Lalu kind of mentioned, we did have like a pre-panel call. So in that call, Jill, you mentioned that a lot of your transition journey has been embracing chaos. So I'm interested in how you see this embrace of chaos translated in Kill Your Landlord. What is the relationship between the aesthetics decisions you made in the film and the chaos of transition as you have experienced it in your own life?
Great question, thank you. And also thanks for coming out, y'all. It's so amazing to just see a room full of queer people enjoying movies with other queer people in them. That's amazing. But yeah, to answer the question, I feel like my own personal transition journey is kind of an inverse of the chaos that y'all saw on screen. A lot of what the characters in Kill Your Landlord go through is a lack of agency and a lack of, I guess, control over where their lives are going. At the end, they get shoved into the VR, living situation, and they're just like kind of left there. Which is not a very happy ending, if you ask me, but an ending that I think a lot of people in the city would like to see for the majority of us. So the chaos that I was talking about embracing is intuiting, what feels right to you, embracing the chaos of, the spontaneousness of your spirit, and just being being a trans person and walking into any public space is a form of disruption to a lot of people. And I recently just moved out of the city and I live in a more conservative area. I live in the high desert now. And, just even walking into a restaurant, you just get all these stares and a lot of people are angry by your presence. And it's kind of beautiful how, just your presence can cause like almost a disturbance. And I think that sort of chaos is very beautiful. And as like queer and trans people, like we gotta be fucking disruptive, right? Like this system is so messed up, So, and like doing things like shutting down the freeway are great, but I think also on an individual level, like how do we walk into a room and be disruptive without even opening our mouths? I think that is like so powerful. and just thinking of ways to embrace that instead of being scared of that power. How do we, approach that type of chaos with like being like almost like aggressively nice to all the cis people that might be angry that you don't look like them or that you're not passing. So yeah.
Yeah, Ripley in our pre-panel conversation talked about like embracing delusion, like being like delusionally nice to like white cis people. So thank you so much. Okay, Kazani. Oh, yeah. Kazani. Something that you mentioned in our previous conversation is how the ability to reimagine the world depends on stability. It is difficult to support people and places while struggling to survive. With this in mind, I'm wondering what tactics you see as most effective for increasing stability and survivable futures for trans people. Where do you decide to put your personal energy into, and how do you make those decisions?
I think the last film definitely isn't an answer, but was to visibly show what it looks like for trans mass folks to survive. But for me personally, I wouldn't use the word tactics. I always dreamed of like being my full self. And today I could do that. But while doing that, am I completely free? To what extent of my capacity I have freedom in how I move, where I'm at, what I wear, who I talk to, and who I pour into and who pour into me, if that makes sense. And so I'm not living yet. I'm still surviving to answer that question. And as I'm surviving, there's a sense of freedom in it a little bit because of my self-determination and my self-agency has grown immaculately by surviving so many tragic and lived experiences that got me here today. And so to answer that, there is no answer. On an individual base, it's just about how you surround yourself and how you move and who you choose to have people around you, especially when you leave your door or wherever home is for you. I'm 34. I'm just now physically having a home in San Francisco, and I'm born and raised here. And so I've been displaced, and so being able to say that I was hanging on to still stay here instead of moving to another state or another place, that's a win. That's a win, not just for me, but folks who look like me, who are silently struggling like me. And so strategically wise, I'm passing. And so when I'm moving in the world, I have a specific way of how I leave the door now. I do a personal ritual. I put my armor on, and I make sure I'm gonna be safe as I'm moving, because the world is against us trans people, and in order for me to continue to get to thriving, I have to constantly have these approaches and practices with myself, and one of them is self-talks. Like I got comfortable with talking to myself in a way where I reclaim my own dignity, my own confidence, my own self-esteem, and a lot of OGs in my life don't got that yet, that are cisgender people, So for me to have that now at my age and still be breathing and being able to maneuver, I do my best to be reflective for others, to not be afraid, if that makes sense. I do my best to put myself out there and clock myself because I know there's so many beautiful, queer, magical human beings that are struggling just like me. And so me putting myself out there is just my purpose. That's my purpose. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. So this next question is for all of you, so you can pick up as you would like. And it really draws on some of the threads that all of you have been mentioning now. But in our preparation call, Ripley said that gender, white supremacy, and capitalism are all functioning exactly as they were designed to. And with that in mind, I'm wondering what ideas you have about breaking the function of those things.
I mean, in a way, you know, like in our physical world, in our physical reality, I think, you know, not that I'm saying this for the camera, not that I'm telling anyone to do this, but seizing property, making that shit ours, you know, because of the way that property functions, especially in San Francisco, it's to push certain people out, and it's to, you know, get like how many empty apartment buildings are there in the city right now, you know, and just walking to the museum from the parking garage, how many tents do you see, you know? Like, imagine if all of us in the room right now were just like, you know what, enough. This is ours now. We're gonna make this community space. We're gonna make a space for ourselves. And just think about how like property functions in this country is just, it's so depressing. So I don't know. That's just off the top. Obviously, kill your landlord, all that good stuff. So I don't know. What do y'all think?
I mean, I like teach students, so I like can wait. Like I feel like like waiting for someone to say something is like kind of my job.
Breaking social structures. Yeah, I definitely agree with reclaiming land. As a matter of fact, I want to acknowledge, I need to acknowledge the land we're standing on, Ohlone land right now. And the reason why I have to do that, because I didn't hear that when we started. And so forgive us to the ancestors who took care and continue to take care of the Ohlone land here in San Francisco. And just to remind folks too, I'm a visitor here. I may be born here and raised here, but I'm still a visitor from Samoa. And so one of my big homies would say, who's from one of the tribes up north in Cali, would say, y'all are the cousins who came over to the mainland here and did trades with us. And so again, I just want to acknowledge that, and needing to acknowledge what we stand on and what we feel on, and what is now hijacked as capitalism and making money off of our relatives who take care of this land. For me individually, what I do daily to contribute to shift social constructs, these ideologies, white supremacy, anti-blackness, I started doing that work myself, interpersonal work, before I can even talk about the bigger picture or the bigger conflict of how we should move better as a people. And two, I take my own inventory. That shit is hard, taking your own inventory when you live in a place that is dominantly the West, the Western culture, right? And so for me, that looks like breathing and also talking with my circle about where do we put our dollar towards. That's whether that's local folks here. I know y'all know all that, right? And that looks like just continue to push the narrative for a better future for the next generation that's coming. Whether if we're not gonna see it, whether if we get tired, whether if we get burnt out, everybody has a role in this world. And so it's embracing the uncomfortable to get to a comfortable place of visioning a world of freedom for everybody. This affects everybody, not just one group of people.
Thank you both. And I think something we discussed in the pre-panel is that what I bring to this panel is this transnational component. I am coming from what you call as Middle East from here, and I don't understand which Middle and East, and I will never get it, but I don't know. First, of course, we need to end and do whatever we need to do to end this genocide that is happening and being pink-washed constantly. And I don't know, like when I see my friends on screen in Istanbul, and I'm gonna share a bit of more stuff from Turkey today. I just wanted to remind you that, like, being in the US is so, I don't know, interesting. Like, I would never describe myself as that I am from Middle East. I'm not from Middle East. Like, I have all other identities. Like, and when you are here, the way you are discussing the things is shifting, or that is for me, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm trying to understand, compare, and contrast how we are living our transness, queerness, feminisms, and one thing I'm a child of feminist movement. When I was growing up, the queer movement was there, but I wasn't maybe not queer enough to be part of them. But as someone who grew up as female in the Middle East, in Turkey, like feminism was where I find liberation. And I understand this word is so co-opted. Feminism was also a state project in Turkey. I understand what feminism means here. I understand trans feminism might have white roots in academia, but my way of survival is really trans feminism. They are in the intersections of transness and feminism because I think they're both abolitionist projects. They're both playing, they're both liberatory projects. And I'm seeing a lot of friends here, I think, whose practices are really feminist, but they're like, oh, feminist. And I'm like, no, we cannot leave the word feminism to TERFs or all these folks who are just co-opting it. And I feel the same for a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I think my way of survival and, I don't know, dealing with all this shit is trans feminism, because I'm a child of both of these movements, and I believe like they are really movements in Turkey. So like people know each other. They're like grassroots organizing. I'm just not talking about the top-down feminism, I guess. And I'm super fragmented today, but yeah.
No, that's good. I'm one of the people Lalu was just like calling out, to be honest, about like someone that's like, I'm like over feminism. It's like part of just like being in like a feminist studies department is just like, anyway, Lalu has consistently reminded me about like trans feminist movements not being tied to Western academia, and I appreciate that about you. So our last question for all three of you has to do with something that Kazani, you said in our preparation call, which was recognizing that it wasn't your job to educate people for the rest of your life, but you also asked, like, what is my job moving forward? So to each of you, what do you see as your job moving forward?
Staying alive for these kids, right? Like I also used to work with children. I edited a children's TV show that you mentioned in my bio, and like working with a lot of trans and queer kids. And myself and my own journey, not having those role models to look up to, and knowing that a lot of them were murdered or killed and by different things, but just like trying to figure out what a peaceful, happy life looks like as a trans person, at least for me. Like in my stage of life right now, that's like really what I'm working towards is finding peace and happiness for myself, and trying to just like project that light and that love, because it's easy to be angry, and like I think we should, rage is important, rage is powerful, but also balancing that with just like keeping the love and balance with the rage, I think is mega important. But yeah, trans children are our future, and we need to protect them, and they're like under attack right now, and it's scary. It's scary what they want to do to these kids, because it's we're next. So
my job is to be the best me every day, and while I'm doing that, there's other multiple jobs that come with it, because that's just how we move. Whether if we don't want it, whether if we do want it, I'm constantly growing and learning and unlearning every day, every moment I get. But my main job is to be the best big brother I can be the best fairy goddad I can be, and just be a loving human being, because we don't have that in this world. There's not. It's so easy to talk about our challenges, our barriers, our struggles, but I believe my purpose is to continue to create love and share love, especially as a Samoan person. That's our magic. We love. We get people together. We have kiki moments. I love all the cutie pies I'm around, and being a part of that magical ancestral alignment of where I come from. When I started transitioning, I was like, oh, this is me. Before the physical, I think someone said it in that video, being trans isn't a choice, but transitioning is a choice. And so for me, when I sat there and I received that back there, I was like, hell yeah, that is what's up. And so again, my job is to continue to share love, even when the haters come, because they need it too. And I'm not a religious person. I know my people come from gifts and magical powers and ways how we healed our folks, and being deemed for it. And so I believe like that is blossoming through me, and it's uncontrollable. But how do I let the next generation and the young Pacifica young people who are trans, who are non-binary, who are two-spirited, that, you could be the best you, and you better shine, baby, because that's your purpose. And so that's my job. Thank you.
I will again contextualize myself in the US with this question. And I think I now feel like my job back in Turkey and here has changed, and it took me a lot of time to understand how it has changed, not through academia or PhD, but now I feel like I'm writing about my community, trans folk, sex workers, and here, and I think I've learned a lot from them, and I see all these platforms as ways to somehow mediate that transness and queerness or community in Turkey to here, or give glimpses of it. And today that's how I'm gonna end, I think, my part here. All the landlord issues, housing crisis and everything. And while I was mentioning the filmmaking process, I forgot to mention the reality of housing crisis in Istanbul or in Turkey in general, and how it got worse, especially after the earthquake with the economic crisis, etc. And trans people are not, they always pay higher rents. That's like a fact check. They always did pay higher rents. They cannot rent a lot of houses, especially sex workers. And now, some of the earthquake survivors cannot rent the houses, or some of the migrants are not allowed to rent houses, etc. And gentrification and capitalism in Turkey might seem like this faraway third world country, but it is a colonizer and it is a descendant of an empire, so it has its hands on all the dirty jobs there as well. With the gentrification ongoing in Istanbul, they recently sealed off one of the oldest trans sex worker houses in like what I would call as maybe partially the Tenderloin of Istanbul. I think there were a couple of more Tenderloins in Istanbul, but throughout the time they changed, and it was like the last remaining part, and trans sex workers have been living in these buildings and doing sex work, and they have been there almost 100 years, I think, this building, and the police just sealed it off a couple of weeks ago, so they are now left houseless, and there is a solidarity campaign going for that because those folks need some support in terms of their housing. And one last thing before I end up is, are we gonna show it, or do we have the time? Okay. I lost one of the friends.
I think
one of
maybe we want to put the QR code while you're
Okay.
describing this, though. Is that correct?
Perfect.
Okay, so just really briefly before you say that, what Lalu was mentioning, that campaign, we are on the TV screen behind us about to have a QR code displayed which links to 2 trans fundraisers, one of which is the one Lalu is describing right now. We also have paper versions of this QR code at the front of the museum, also right here if anyone wants one. If you are in attendance and you have disposable income, especially if you are white, cis, or both, please donate to one or both of these campaigns. So the campaigns listed include the one Lalu was mentioning, the Street Solidarity for Trans Sex Workers, which will support housing for the currently homeless trans women that Lalu was describing. And then the second campaign is TGIJP's Capital Campaign, which will fund permanent building for TGIJP in San Francisco. So take a second, scan that, or grab this, and then we do have one more thing to show that Lalu is going to describe right now.
And I think, and sorry about it, you also didn't know it, but it was news. We lost a very important member of our community in Turkey, Ganimet, who was the biggest troublemaker I have ever met, who was a trans sex worker, a Lubunya, a writer, and someone who I think disrupted everything in herself, in life in general. And one thing she really didn't want, but she ended up, is she died in her mom's house, and she never wanted that. And I'm sorry for that. And she passed last week. And I thought, like, going back to the academia will never reach the embodied trans knowledge. And there is this short video that I made with a couple of trans folks when we were working together in Pink Life, Pembe Hayat Association. And we just discussed archives. And I think they do way better than what academia says about archives. And yeah. And thank you for watching this part. I just didn't know how to tell about Gani because she's witty, she's smart, she's a lot of fun. And I just thought that might be better to show her. And thank you.